Imagine a river of beer flowing down the streets. Sounds like a dream, right? Well, back in 1814, this dream turned into a nightmare. Picture this, it's the 17th of October in the heart of London, in an area known as St. Giles. The air is thick with the yeasty aroma of brewing beer, a common scent in this neighbourhood, home to the Moo and Company Brewery, an establishment known for its prodigious production of porter beer. On this fateful day, the usual bustle was interrupted by an unusual disaster. A rupture in one of the brewery's massive vats unleashed an unfathomable torrent of beer. We're talking about well over 1.4 million litres, enough to fill more than 500,000 typical bathtubs. This wasn't a harmless trickle, but a full-blown deluge that flooded the streets, inundating homes and businesses alike. A tidal wave of beer transforming the cityscape into a sudsy chaos. The irony of this event is as bitter as the beer that caused it. Beer, a beverage we often associate with joy, celebration and camaraderie, suddenly became a harbinger of destruction and despair. The very symbol of merriment morphed into a cause of devastation. In the blink of an eye, the dream of a river of beer turned into a nightmare that would leave its mark on London and its inhabitants for years to come. This deluge wasn't just a spectacle for onlookers, but a deadly disaster. The flood claimed several lives, making it an event not only unusual, but also tragic. The streets of St. Giles were left awash with beer and sorrow, a stark reminder of the catastrophe that had just unfolded. But how did this bizarre incident occur? Let's delve into the details. The story begins in the heart of London, at the Moo and Company Brewery. This wasn't just any brewery, it was a titan of the time, a cornerstone of London's bustling beer industry. Founded in the late 18th century, Moo and Company had quickly risen to prominence, its beer flowing as steadily as the Thames itself. But what made the brewery so special? It was an intricate dance of barley, hops, water and yeast, performed in massive vats, some reaching over 22 feet in height. The process of brewing was a delicate one. Barley was soaked, sprouted, and then dried to create malt. The malt was then boiled with hops and water to create a sweet liquid called wort. Yeast was added to the wort, and the magic of fermentation began. Over time, the yeast converted the sugars in the wort into alcohol, resulting in beer. This process was carried out in those towering vats, each capable of holding thousands of gallons. On the fateful day of October 17th, 1814, one of these vats, filled to the brim with over 135,000 gallons of beer, suffered a catastrophic failure. A metal hoop holding the vat together snapped, and like a row of dominoes, the force of the rupture caused other vats in the brewery to fail as well. Now, you might be wondering, why wasn't the flow of beer stopped? The answer lies in the sheer volume and force of the beer. The torrent was so strong that it demolished the brewery's walls, and before anyone could react, it spilled out into the streets. The brewery workers, taken by surprise, could do little more than watch as the beer rushed out, drowning the surrounding area in a frothy tide. There were no emergency protocols in place, no contingency plans for such an event. The unimaginable had happened, and there was simply no stopping it. In mere moments, the streets of London were submerged in a sea of beer. The wave of beer was unstoppable, and the consequences unimaginable. The immediate aftermath of the London beer flood was a scene of utter chaos and devastation. Streets had transformed into rivers of ale, homes lay in ruins, and a pall of sorrow hung heavy over the parish of St. Giles. The flood caused the tragic loss of 8 lives, mainly women and children. The victims were caught unaware by the sudden deluge of beer, with no time to escape. Their homes, made of poor quality material and built in close proximity, were no match for the force of the flood. The destruction was not confined to life and property alone. The flood also swept away the livelihood of many, with businesses and workshops in the vicinity left in shambles. As word of the disaster spread, the authorities swung into action. Firefighters, police officers, and local volunteers worked tirelessly, wading through beer-soaked streets to rescue those trapped in the wreckage and to recover the bodies of the unfortunate victims. The public response was overwhelming, with people from across London and beyond coming together to assist in the rescue efforts and offer aid to those affected. Yet, amid the tragedy, an odd phenomenon took place. The flood of beer had turned into a bizarre spectacle, attracting throngs of onlookers. Many even saw it as an opportunity for free beer, scooping up the beverage from the streets. This, however, resulted in a secondary issue of public drunkenness, further adding to the challenges faced by the authorities. The London beer flood served as a stark reminder of the perils of industrial accidents in an increasingly urbanized society. It also highlighted the need for stricter safety regulations in factories and breweries, particularly those located in densely populated areas. But perhaps most importantly, it underscored the resilience of the human spirit as the community came together to overcome the tragedy. The London beer flood was not just a disaster, it was a wake-up call. In the wake of the disaster, the courts were left with a sticky situation. The London beer flood was a tragedy of an unusual kind, one that left a legal quagmire in its frothy wake. The legal proceedings that followed were as convoluted as the event itself, with the courts grappling with the question of liability. Who was to blame for this catastrophe? The brewery workers who perhaps neglected their duties? The brewery owners who failed to maintain their equipment? Or was it simply an unfortunate accident, a freak event that no one could have predicted or prevented? The court's decision was as surprising as the event itself. The ruling was that the London beer flood was an act of God. Yes, you heard that right. A divine intervention of a particularly frothy kind. The court ruled that the disaster was so unexpected, so out of the ordinary, that no human foresight could have prevented it. This ruling effectively absolved the brewery of any liability for the disaster. They were not held responsible for the damage caused by the flood or for the lives lost. It was a decision that sent shockwaves through the city. The public's reaction was one of disbelief and outrage. How could a man-made structure, filled with man-made brew, rupture and cause such devastation, and yet no man be held responsible? The brewery, instead of being penalized, was actually allowed to claim the lost beer on their taxes, further exacerbating public discontent. To the people of London, it seemed as though the brewery had not only escaped punishment, but had been rewarded for their negligence. This ruling set a precedent in English law, one that would be referenced in future cases involving unanticipated disasters. It was a decision that raised questions about responsibility, about blame, and about the role of the unpredictable in our lives. The London beer flood left a bitter taste in the mouth of justice. In the end, the only thing more difficult to swallow than the flood of beer that washed through the streets of London was the court's decision that followed. The London beer flood, a tragic event, left an enduring impact on London and its brewing industry. The aftermath of the disaster was not confined to the immediate loss of life and property. It had far-reaching implications that changed the way breweries operated. The flood served as a wake-up call for the industry, highlighting the urgent need for enhanced safety measures and stricter regulations. In the wake of the catastrophe, breweries across London undertook significant changes. They began implementing stricter safety protocols and investing in more robust infrastructure. The hazardous practice of storing massive amounts of beer in towering wooden vats was soon replaced with safer, smaller, and sturdier containers. This shift not only improved the safety standards, but also enhanced the quality and consistency of the brew, an unexpected silver lining to the tragic event. The government too stepped in, enforcing tighter regulations around the construction and maintenance of brewing facilities. The breweries were now required to adhere to a stringent set of guidelines, ensuring that such a disaster would not repeat itself. The London beer flood, in essence, changed the face of the brewing industry, not just in London, but across the country. But the legacy of the London beer flood extends beyond the brewing industry. The event has been etched into the city's collective memory, serving as a reminder of the unpredictable nature of life. Today, in modern London, the disaster is commemorated in a rather unique way. A small plaque near the site of the original brewery stands as a testament to the event. It not only memorializes the lives lost, but also symbolizes the city's resilience and its ability to learn and grow from its past. In the end, the London beer flood serves as a stark reminder that even the most ordinary things can become extraordinary under the right, or rather wrong, circumstances. It underscores the importance of preparedness and the need for constant vigilance, even in the seemingly mundane aspects of life.